maybe. I mean, do you have a favorite color?
Yeah, green.
Is it?
And that's
Yeah.
not it's been green just because that's a springtime color, and
Yeah.
I like basically all shades of green, and it kind of just like reminds me of nature, and
Yeah, I can see that.
that's why. But it doesn't mean that I don't like the other colors. I don't discriminate against the
Oh,
other
yes, it
colors.
does.
I
That's
just
how
really
social media works,
I
Erin.
just
Oh, you like
if you
green? Oh, you're a
that means
reddist?
you're
Is that what
against
you are?
everything else.
Hello, and welcome to Middleish, the podcast about moderation in all things. I am Michael Gray.
And I am Erin Green.
Good morning, Erin Green.
Good morning.
You know, we're recording at a new time now. So when we both say good morning,
We
neither
mean
one
it.
of us is, neither one of us is being a liar. Like before, it was like, wait, do I say good morning to you when it's morning there, or do you? Yeah.
I know.
So
all of
finally,
these-
we're being honest with all of you.
Thank goodness. It's only
Mhm.
taken us a year and a half.
Yeah,
To
we're
do
trying to
this.
be trustworthy for once, you know.
Way to pitch our episode. What if there's a new listener on here today and they're like, oh my God, this is the wrong podcast for
No,
me.
this is the right time because you missed all the lies, and now we're good people. So this is the perfect time to come into
Right.
it. So yeah, you missed dishonest Middleish.
We're off to a great start. A great
Mhm.
start.
Yep, it's yeah. Yeah, how's it going?
You know,
You know,
we where it's kind of hitting that winter time, like, okay, we really can't spend too much time outside because there's no snow here yet. So
yeah.
if y'all are pray for snow people out there listening, please pray for snow because we need to get some skiing
Just be specific about
going
where you
on.
pray it for, because I don't want it
Yeah,
here in
don't
Houston.
pray for
So
it
send
down
it to
in Houston.
Boise. But you guys got some yesterday or 2 days ago, didn't you?
Oh, barely. Like
Oh,
a
really?
little. Yeah, it's nothing
Okay.
stuck here in town, but the mountains got some. I think depending on
Gotcha.
where you are, I mean, maybe somebody is at a higher elevation and got a ton of snow and is listening to this going, Erin, you're full of crap. We're loaded, but I don't think
Back to
most
the
places.
lies.
I know. See, we
It
can't
was
stray
fun
far
while it
from that.
lasted.
I know. So, so I do think some of the higher elevations got snow, but we didn't. But we, we put up some Christmas decorations and kind of hung around the house this weekend. And I've been bugging Matt to paint the spare bedroom, and he's been resistant. I don't know why. Maybe because it's a
Painting bedrooms is
freaking
fun.
chore. And he finally on Sunday at like 3:00. Well, I was thinking maybe we should run and get some paint and start on the spare bedroom. I was like, are you serious? Like, wait a minute. I don't know what's happening.
That's funny.
And so we have this half painted spare bedroom upstairs, and that's Riley's room. Like he has like a spot on the bed that has a little divot in it where he sleeps. And so it's all torn apart and moved around, and it's half one color, half another. And so he's totally confused. So if y'all hear him crying in the background, which he's been doing incessantly for the last few days, that's why, because his room is in shambles.
Cats don't handle change well.
No.
They're not fans of things being different than they want them to be.
Like, even if he walks in and there's like a shoe on the floor in a different spot, then he'll like walk in and stare at it like, who put that there? Who did that?
Excuse me.
This-
What is this?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But we tried. Have you seen the videos where they put the cucumber behind the cat and the cat turns around and there's a cucumber there and it freaks out? It like jumps. So you should find it. I mean, get on, I don't know, Instagram or something, or Google it and see. I don't know, just look at cucumber cat or something and see what that brings up. But people, it's a thing. Like, you put the cucumber on the floor right behind the cat as it's got its back turned, it's eating or something. And you just kind of set it in there really quietly and just watch. And then the cat will turn around and do like the whole jumping and freaking out, startling thing. Riley doesn't do that. We've done that to him. We've tried, and he just like looks at it, and then he looks at us like, "Hey, asshole, what's this doing here? Move it.
Yeah.
It's my house."
That sounds about right for a cat. I think I posted this on social media, like, I don't know, maybe a month or so ago. Like, so I was in the tub one night and door was closed and I hear our cat meowing at the door, like over and over and over. So I'm like, oh my God. It's like I get out of the tub, right? Like, I'm like, are you freaking kidding me? Like, I have to get out of the tub, dry off. I wrap my towel around me over the door. I'm like, what do you want? And she like runs away towards the kitchen, right? I'm like, all right, maybe she wants food or wants to go out. Like, I want to get back to my bath, so I'll take care of this. So I walk in the kitchen, and right next to her food bowl, she's thrown up. So there's like throw
Oh
up on the
no.
floor. So she looks at it, looks at
And
me,
looks at you.
looks
Yeah.
back at it, and then like continues eating her food. Like, are you going to clean this up? What kind of place are you running here? Like, do you expect me to eat next to this? I'm like, my cat just got me out of the tub to clean up her puke so she can eat in peace.
Well,
like, that's what just happened.
maybe you need to get her a little butler bell. So she like, hello, human.
Right.
I need you now.
Seriously. Yeah.
I
So I can
know.
be summoned.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I know we have a number of listeners who have cats. So
Yeah.
I hope you're getting a kick out of this conversation.
Yes. So before we dive in, I want to tell a quick story because I think it's the holidays and it's sort of a holiday related story. So,
Okay.
and I think
Go for it.
think people enjoy it. So my girls have advent calendars, right? My mom makes these huge ones that she sends down, and then Kat got them some too. And the ones Kat got them are just like, they have like little M&Ms or candies in them. And Sophie, my 5-year-old, is real big into sharing. Like, anything she gets, like, she wants you to have some too. And she says, because sharing is caring. And so she always like wants to share everything. So 2 mornings ago, I think it was Sunday morning, she had crawled into bed with us like around 6:30 in the morning and just kind of laid and snuggled for a little bit, and then got up and was excited to go open her advent calendar. So she leaves the room, and I'm going to try to go back to sleep because it's Sunday morning. And I hear her come back in, and I'm like, I've started to nod back off a little bit. And I have my back to like the edge of the bed. I'm facing the center of the bed. And I kind of hear her come behind me, and like she taps on my shoulder. And as I turn towards her, she has an M&M in her fingers that she proceeds to shove into my mouth. Like, as I mostly
like, you're not
asleep,
even awake. You're gonna just like inhale this thing.
Yeah, like kind of barely, like, oh, what's going on? Like right into my mouth. And she's like, I got an M&M for you.
Oh my gosh.
So that's how my morning started on Sunday.
And God knows where that M&M traveled before it got to your lips.
Being force-fed an M&M while I'm mostly unconscious.
Love it.
So
yeah, good.
Just wanted to share that with everybody.
Why wouldn't you want to wake up to M&Ms? I mean, isn't that everybody's dream? Right?
Yeah. It was pretty great. You know,
yeah,
like, oh, it was a nice little.
I can think of a lot worse things to wake up to.
Yeah, a lot worse. It was odd.
Yeah,
but I won't say it was completely unpleasant.
Oh dear.
So, yeah, that's how my day started on Sunday.
That's good. I like it. Yeah. A lot better than what a cat would wake me up with in the morning.
Yeah, or get you out of the tub for. Yeah.
Yes.
All right. Story time.
So we do have a topic.
Michael. Yes.
Well, you might have more stories with today's topic,
possible.
right?
It's possible. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So we are talking about the joy of movement. It's the holiday season, and it's all about joy, right? Joy to the world and all that crap. So yeah, yes. We're talking about the joy of movement. You know, Erin and I. Well, do you want to talk about why this topic came up for you? This is kind of your idea.
Yeah. I have realized so I retired from professional triathlon at the end of 2019, and yes, I have still engaged in structured training, and yes, I have done some races this year. Even the year before, I did some, competition kinds of things, but not nearly to the level that I was before, and not really like with any, expectation or outcome. So over the last almost 2 years now, because my last race was in November of 2019. So I shut it down after that in terms of structured training. I have really been getting back in touch with what I love about physical movement and exercise. Um, Exercise in the form of like, how can I, get my heart rate up? How can I move my body in ways that I know is, helpful for me getting through my daily life and preserving my health. I mean, I think about those things, flexibility
Mhm.
and strength and, cardiovascular health, those things, but then also just the joy of movement. Like, what can I do that counts as moving my body today? And I think we don't give this enough credit in our own lives when we hear about diet and exercise, diet and exercise. I mean, think
Yeah.
about when you hear the word exercise, it's it might bring up, visions of going out for a run or a bike ride, something that has to be um, fit into that exercise box. You have to go to a
Mhm.
gym. You have to, maybe have somebody instructing you through it and pushing you. Um, but movement is very different and is much more free
Yeah.
and is much more creative. And I'm thinking back to, something we just had that great interview with Cody Stone last week,
Mhm.
where she talks about, making it sort of your creativity and your craft and practicing a little bit of freedom with whatever it is you do, your performance. So it's really got me thinking about how I move my body, how I can really just embrace the joy of it, and also not having a purpose for every single movement. So, and
Right.
every single session, which I'll get into a little bit more, but that's that was basically the background, was shifting to how do I kind of reset from having this very regimented, high volume, high pressure and structured training program, and wondering if I could ever be a normal human again, in the sense that like I can just go move and feel good doing it and it doesn't have to have a
Mhm.
purpose. I worried about that for quite some time. Like, how am I ever going to just go out and be
Sure.
normal and, move my body um, for the joy of it? And I feel like I'm getting there and I'm appreciating it more. So I wanted to talk about that today.
Yeah. And I like it because I think it's a great topic because so often, like we talked about, even if it's something that falls under the umbrella of exercise,
Hmm.
I think there's almost always, like, if someone says, I want to exercise, or if someone like hires me, right, like to design programs for them and that kind of stuff, there's usually like obligation attached to
Mm,
that, right? Like I have to, and if I don't, there's like guilt associated with it, and
yeah.
or regret, or whatever. And and I think there's a fine balance there of like, yeah, I think there is absolutely value in discipline and doing things because I know it's good for me, and because it's like a deeper level of self-care where it's not hinged on whether or not I feel like it, but it's something I've dedicated myself to doing on a regular basis and to do it consistently. I think there's absolutely value in that. But it's also a fine line of when that becomes like obligation and have tos. And
Hmm.
and I think once we start getting into that obligation and the have to, we start losing the joy of what exercise or non-exercise activity can be. And I think when a client or someone, just kind of begins to fall in love with movement, exercise
Hmm.
or not, just moving their body on a regular basis, and begins to see like connect how their mood and their interactions and their relationships and their patients and that kind of stuff are impacted by just physically being active, or
Hmm.
how they're negatively impacted by not being physically active for periods of time. um,
Hmm.
when people start to make those connections, I think there begins to you begin to connect like a deeper sense of like joy and even like happiness and contentment with things, with with movement and exercise. And I think that's, a place that I hope, my clients and other people get to, is that place where it's like there's real joy in movement. I mean,
Mhm.
there's chemical joy too that we can talk about, like what movement does in the body. But when we can sort of escape that obligation and the have to, and begin to develop a deep, like, I want to, like, I mean, this is maybe a dramatic word, but I long to like move my
Yeah.
body, like I want to do it, not for any outcome, or not because of any obligation, but just because I know that it's going to bring good things to me just because of what it is. I think then we start to really connect movement with some really deep self-care, nurturing kind things for ourselves.
I think that your word, I long to move my body, I think is appropriate because how many of us have experienced cabin fever, getting whether you've been sick and so you're kind of in bed and stuck at home for a number of days, or whether you are visiting a friend or family member who doesn't move their
Mhm.
body often. And so then you're just kind of sitting inside or just being sedentary all day. I think many people can probably relate to, man, I really need to move, even if it's not the first thing that you would choose to do. I mean, there definitely are people that are just not big time movers. They just don't really enjoy it, but they know deep down that I need to. Like it feels better after I do. And so I'm going to do this.
Yeah.
I think that that is something to start building awareness around if you're not already aware of how you view movement and what it feels like to move your body. Just start kind of tapping into that a little bit and realize what it feels like when you don't move for
Mhm.
days on end or even hours on end. I mean, if you're just chained to your desk for several hours, and what does it feel like when you get up and you start moving around the house or you go outside to get the mail or something like that?
Yeah.
Um, I also think another piece of this is that when people, like when you said people come to you for an exercise program, right? Like they want something structured and then there's this obligation that goes to it. I think that that obligation and expectation of what they're supposed to be doing often gets
Mhm.
in the way of actually doing something. And we talk about this a lot with this topic. I think I'm thinking of a client that I have right now that, I mean, she was in her younger years a very accomplished athlete. She was a sprinter, an accomplished runner, and she really has been struggling with every time I've tried to get back to running, I get injured because she has a bum knee and she goes at it too fast. She has that athlete mentality where she's like, well, I used to be able to do this, so I'm going to do it.
So here we
And
go.
so anything less than her expectation feels like insignificant or not even worthwhile.
Mhm.
And that's that dichotomous thinking we talk about a lot, where I'm like, look, if you can go out for a walk is just a slow run. And once I said that to her, she was like, oh, okay. So it's some of it is just reframing how this client thinks of exercise and her expectations for herself. And then some of it is giving her permission, so if she's hired me for
Yeah.
health and nutrition coaching and I'm giving her permission to, like, hey, just do that easy stretching routine that you found on this YouTube page,
Mhm.
a couple times a week, and it's very easy for her, but then finding that actually it's the carving out the time and it's actually doing it instead of like letting those expectations get in the way is a big
Right.
thing.
Yeah. And that's a really good point. Something that I wanted to talk about too. I'm glad you brought it up because it might have fallen out of my head. Is that so? As a trainer, like I certainly have a a bias, and I think for good reason, towards strength training. I think there are a host of benefits to physically getting stronger, to really putting the muscles under, strain, to induce that damage that they didn't have to repair. Like I think there's a lot of benefits mentally and physically to it. But if someone isn't interested in strength training, or it's just not their jam, right? Then it's my job to set my bias aside, my preference aside, and to figure out, like, what do you enjoy? Because I
Mm-hmm.
think when you are beginning to introduce, either some or more activity, whether it's exercise or just movement, into your life, I think it's really important that we start at places that that we enjoy, because one of the worst or one of the best ways to not do it for very long is to do something you hate. Like if someone hates to run and you're like,
Yeah.
okay, you need to, jog 5 times a week. Like how long is this going to last? Same thing with strength training. So for me, it's like, I have clients that aren't strength training at all,
Mhm.
and we may get there, we may not. Like that's not as important as developing and looking at ways to introduce more exercise, more movement in ways that are enjoyable. I
Mhm.
have clients where, like our goals for the week are maybe getting 2 or 3 10-minute walks,
Mhm.
maybe it's doing a 5-minute mobility routine 3 or 4 times a week while they're watching TV in the evening.
Mhm.
Maybe it's, hey, going on a bike ride with your kids and hopping on the trampoline and playing a game of tag. Like these things are, it's really critical that, so we're talking about the joy of movement, and when we start to introduce exercise, we often take all the joy out of it,
Yeah.
and it's
Yeah.
only obligation and
It
expectation, like
work.
right out the
Yeah.
gate. Yeah. So now do something you hate so that you can feel better about yourself. Like,
I know.
okay, we're off to a great start.
Right.
So like, even though I am certainly biased towards strength training, and again, I think for really good reasons, that doesn't mean that it's the best option for someone. The best option is movement that you enjoy, whether that's exercise or not. You know, um, I mean, technically, I think any movement is exercise, right? But like if we're looking at it as exercise purposes or just to get up and move our body more. And I think, a good way to do that is one, just like explore, like try some stuff,
Mhm.
like try a walk, try riding a bike, maybe try the rower at the gym, your friend has a treadmill, cool, or an elliptical, try that out.
Yeah.
Like
Maybe try a
just play
Zumba
around.
class or take
Yeah, or do
salsa
some
lessons.
yoga
I mean,
or yeah.
try
Yeah.
rock climbing. Go find a
Hmm.
rock climbing gym. Like
Yep.
there's so many different ways to
Yeah.
move your body, people.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's important to give yourself permission to explore and to try some stuff, and see what you enjoy. Because I think there's a really good chance that for everyone, there's ways to move your body that you enjoy. I think that's
Mhm.
probably likely. And I think along with that, it can be really important to just begin to build awareness about not only like what does your body feel like when you move, because there may be some negative associations there for people, right? Like we got a
Mhm.
society that beats us down about our bodies. We may not feel so great doing certain things, um, and that's okay. Um, but also, like, what else does this bring to me? Like, one of my favorite ways to move my body right now is just going for a walk in my neighborhood. And
Mhm.
part of that is it feels good to move my body. Part of it also is it I feel better being outside. I like feeling the sunshine. I like hearing the birds or listening to music. I like feeling the breeze, right? I like a change of scenery. There's other things going on. It feels good to like get a sweat going,
Yeah.
There's other things going on that make it more than just like, I'm going to move my body now. And the cool thing about doing this stuff more consistently is I know that I'm going to enjoy it. And that's an important piece of this too, is with that consistency piece, is like sometimes it can be like, I don't want to go do this, I don't want to go do this. But when we've sort of built some proof to ourselves, when we've sort of like, developed that proof of like, I've done this enough to know that I'm going to be glad I did it,
Mhm.
it makes it easier to do. you know
Yeah.
like I've never regretted a bike ride with my kids. I don't think about the physical movement piece of it really at all. It's
Mhm.
great movement, and it feels good to move my body, but it's also all this other stuff that I know it's going to be awesome. Like we're going to
Mhm.
laugh and we're going to have fun, and it's going to be a great time. And knowing that makes it easier to say yes when they're like, "Hey, can we go on a bike ride?" Because I have
I
that sort of proof.
I think that's a good point too, to tie a positive to the movement or exercise or physical activity of choice. I remember working with a couple clients who were avid. One was an avid reader and one was an avid writer. And both of them would love to just sit with their book or their notebook for hours on end and do their thing. And they also knew that they wanted to work on being more physically active. It's important for their health. They knew all the reasons they wanted to do it. It just was this enjoyable thing that they like to do that happened to be sedentary, was just really hard for them to give that up to tie in this physical activity. And I said, well, what if, it was nice and kind of on the verge of summer. It was like late spring. And I said, what if you walked to the park with grab a blanket and whatever, maybe a snack or a drink or something, and walk to the park and you sit and read in the park for a number of hours, or ride your bike to the park and go. So we're getting outside, which is, the research says when we're outside, we move more, just period. Yeah. If you get outside, you will be moving more. And this is true for children. This is true for adults. So anything I can do, like if that's a first step, like, hey, spend more time in nature, I'm going to nudge them in that direction. Because that in itself is going to build more movement into their day. So that's the first thing I'll try and edge toward. How can we get you out into nature? And then how can we also tie in, we started talking about, well, what could this do if you ride your bike or you walk to the park with your book? I would think you get a really good reading session and you get really into the story and you're walking home and your brain is kind of able to relive that story and really kind of think about what you just read in your book. And, any of us who have been immersed in reading and just held wrapped with this great story, that you live there for a little while, like your brain keeps going back to it. And so we just talked about these ways that physical activity could be woven into seemingly sedentary activities that you also enjoy. And how can you put those two things together? So again, a lot of this is creativity and reframing what it is to be physically active.
I love that. Well, and just, as someone who, I consider myself a writer. I like to write. I've always liked to write since I was in middle school. I have found with exercise at the gym, but even more so with walks around my neighborhood, that it's very mentally stimulating. It's very, for me, it's very stimulating in creative ways. It's real often that just walking around my neighborhood, I will either have like an idea or a concept that I'm like, oh, there's really something here that I need to flesh out, or I'll be able to figure out how to better articulate an idea I've had previously or a concept of like, how do I boil this down and make it, something that I can present in a really easily digestible way, to present to people, to clients, or on social media, or to just something I'm working on writing, an ebook, whatever. And that's the cool thing. That's another thing for me that I've been able to tie to exercise that helps me want to do this, want to move my body, is like, I know I'm probably going to have some other benefits that are tied to other things that I love to do that don't seem directly related in any kind of way, but they are. I know that when I come back from a walk, I'm going to be like, if I've been working all morning and I'm going to be more productive. I come back and I sit down and I'm clearer, I'm more alert. I know if things are kind of tense in the house, or, like we're having attitudes with kids or whatever, like I go for a walk and I come back, I am more patient. Like I know these things because I've done them enough that I can tie all of these other benefits to movement, and so I know that it's beyond just like I'm moving my body now and I'm getting physical benefits. There's a host of things that happen when I choose to just go move that aren't going to happen otherwise.
Yeah. And I think this takes me back to, some of the things I was thinking about just last week. After years of having structured, purposeful workouts and movements, everything had a purpose to prepare me for racing, to prepare me for the next training session, to build upon. And I learned this, way back in college when I started really looking into strength and conditioning as a, um, a professional avenue for myself. I started, I kind of strayed from that. I grew up with dancing. I fell in love with like aerobics and step aerobics and all this, like, just, you know, step kickboxing. Like I did Taibo with Billy Blanks. Do you remember that era
Billy
back in the,
Blanks. Yes,
yeah,
I
back in
do.
the early
Man, I kind of
2000s?
forgot
It was a
about
big
that.
deal.
It
And
was a
this
big deal.
it was just, I
Typo.
mean, you guys, this kind of stuff was just moving your body, getting your heart rate up.
Yeah.
And it wasn't preparing you for like building upon and getting trained for something. It was
Mhm.
purely to move your body, get your heart rate up, move your muscles, build a little bit of strength and cardio. And so
I
when I
enjoyed
got
it.
into strength and conditioning, yeah. And then the mentality just really shifted into everything has a purpose. You don't
Mm.
combine these three moves together just because it makes it more efficient and fun and kind of this complex movement. You only focus on this one move because that's what strengthens this muscle the most
Yeah.
effectively. It became this very structured and rigid kind of view
Mhm.
of physical activity. So for me, that, I mean, it came in very handy for me to look at training that way. Every session had a purpose, even the
Yeah.
sessions that were non-sessions. So even if it
Mhm.
was super easy, there was a reason it was super easy because I had to prepare myself for the super hard shit that was coming in the next day or two. So then when you train your brain to be in that space where everything has to have a purpose, I found, I mean, I still enjoyed it. I got so much joy from my years of training. Yes, there's a lot of work there.
Mhm.
It brought me a lot of joy. So it's not like I lost the joy, but I think I lost sight of what it's like to just move for
Yeah.
no purpose or intention. I got that fixed when I would go to weddings and I dance my face off, and like just go crazy on the dance floor.
Yeah.
That was like my freedom. I could just do whatever I wanted in
Yeah.
that moment. Um, I've started going to these classes at Pivot, which is a local gym I've talked about here before.
Mhm.
And they're just, there's some different strength classes. There's some, hit kind of cardio classes that you do, like lots of like up, down, off the floor burpees and jumping and that
Mhm.
kind of thing. And I'm in this class the other day and I'm just like, I can just picture some of my strength and conditioning colleagues like being all up in their, you know,
Yeah.
brains about this is what's the point of that? Like, what are you doing? Like, what's that even working? And, you know, here I am enjoying it though, because it's really, I don't know, it's working for me. It's just moving. It's just having some kind
Right.
of, and the instructor's there, showing us the moves and stuff. So yeah, there's structure to it, but
Mhm.
it's really doesn't have a purpose other than getting my heart rate up and working these muscles in different ways that feel good to me and are creative. And so anyway, that was kind of my long drawn out full circle spiel of saying this is how this topic really came to mind, and these are some of the things I'm doing in my life today to
Yeah.
help me like reconnect with that joy of
Yeah.
movement.
So building on that, what are your favorite ways to move right now? What types of movement or exercise bring you the most joy
Hmm.
right now? Or
I
or specific like exercises like
Yeah.
squatting or whatever.
So I've really gotten into some strength and power workouts at Pivot. They have what they call the
Mhm.
pod. So it's like a WOD, only it's the pivot of the day, not the workout of the day. So there's a lot of different strength moves, some of which are completely new to me, even coming from a background in exercise and fitness. And, I catch on pretty quickly, but they're new and they're
Mhm.
challenging. And I'm still figuring out like what kind of weight I should be doing here. And so every time I go in, it's a little bit new and can I, do a little bit more this time? Can I, do it a little bit faster this time? That kind of
Yeah.
stuff. So that's really getting me. And I love it because there is no end game. I know that, I mean, with all the research and talk we've done about like menopause and strength training, I know that I'm getting a head start on that. I
Mhm.
know that this is the time of year when I typically do strength training kinds of things. And so it feels good and natural to me. Um, I also love just doing the activities, I mean, swim, bike, run has been, my life for how many years,
Yeah.
but doing those activities at a more joyful pace and in a creative way. So I'll go ride my bike just to commute to get from point A to point B and just for the fun of it.
Mm.
I'll go do different types of bike riding with different people to make it more enjoyable. I signed up for a cross country masters race in San Diego that my friend is kind of pestering me. Once you turn 40, all of a sudden they're like, "Hey, masters, like let's race, Erin." And I'm like, I don't know. But I signed up. It's only a 6K, which I know I can do. But so I've started doing like some dabbling in some just pure run training, which has
Mhm.
been really fun. But it's also just it is like this joyful movement kind of thing because I don't do it on a track. I pick the workouts and I'm not a running coach. And so for me, it's the creative process of like, how does this feel? How does this feel? What
Mhm.
about this? Where I've always had that fed to me before, I'm actually creating it and kind of, producing this creativity. And so that has been, just another spin on, yes, it's training, but there's this like kind of joyful creativity to it. um Man, those are probably some of my top ones right now. And then just
Yeah.
I actually really enjoy just kind of puttering around the house and staying active, just doing stuff to make my immediate environment more enjoyable. So,
Mhm.
you can definitely work up a sweat cleaning a 2-story
Yeah,
house. So,
for sure. Awesome. I like all of
what do
those.
you have some favorite ones?
Yeah. So, it's cooled off quite a bit here. Um, it's kind of been warmer the last few days, but it's we're getting cooler nights for the most part. Humidity tends to be lower this time of year. So this is like the really nice time of year to be outside. And
Mm-hmm.
so for me, I just really love walking around my neighborhood. Sometimes I'll do that at night, later on. Sometimes it's kind of first thing in the morning before I start work, or sometimes just as like a break during the day. Sometimes by myself, sometimes with the dogs, sometimes with the girls or the family, whatever. But I just have been loving just walking outside, with
Mm-hmm.
again, no intent of like, I'm gonna go get my heart rate up, but just like
Mm-hmm.
I just want to go move my body and be outside because it feels really good.
Mm-hmm.
I've really been digging walks, and mobility work. I've really enjoyed mobility work for a long time, and I still do. I'll often, like if I'm watching TV after everybody's in bed or something, just drop on my living room floor and spend 5 or 10 minutes just stretching and doing mobility drills. And it just, at 41, things are starting to get a little tighter, and like
Yeah.
and it just feels really good. I wake up
Mm-hmm.
next morning, feel a little more loose and feel a little better throughout the day. My posture is better throughout the day. Um, Sophie's been big into like dancing, like saying, "Hey
Mm.
Alexa, play Disney princess songs." And then she's like, "Daddy, let's dance." And we'll go in the living room and we'll just
Mm-hmm.
dance, which is awesome and super fun.
Mm-hmm.
And then she and Lila have both been into like doing like air guitar. So like
Oh
well,
yeah.
they'll put on a song and we'll be in the kitchen and like they'll hand me a broom, and I'm the air guitarist as they have another broom and they're singing. We'll just like dance around the island in the kitchen and playing air guitar and being a little band. And that's like been something they've been doing a lot. And that's just like super fun. It's movement because otherwise I'd be sitting watching them probably, but
Yes.
I'm up and I'm moving. And I never once think about like, oh, I'm moving my body now. I'm just like, no, this is super fun. And
Mm-hmm.
my girls are stoked that I'm engaging in this silly, fun thing with them. And that's what it's about. I just happen to be moving my body while we're doing it. And then I
I
always
think,
enjoy yard work. I like
yeah,
mowing the
yeah.
lawn. I like raking leaves. I like, pulling weeds. And I've always enjoyed that kind of stuff. And again, it's less about movement. It's more about like kind of connecting with nature, feeling the
Mm-hmm.
grass and the soil and stuff, and just being outside. Those are kind of my jams right now.
I like that you pointed out that you don't think about I'm going to move my body now. Like it's time to move.
Yeah.
I think that that's something that we've sort of um I guess discussed in this episode as you some people do need to be intentional about getting up and moving because they tend to just be naturally sedentary. I also think that it's helpful to find those activities where you are moving and it doesn't feel like it's full of effort, or you have to set aside, a specific time. It just gets you up and moving around a little bit more. And anybody with kids, I mean, I used to tell parents when I worked at WIC, turn on the music, turn off the TV and turn on the music and see what happens in your house. And just see if you can get your kids and you into moving around a little more, turn off the TV and go outside, see what happens, and just see if you can move around a little more. And it really does become this, just puts you in a different realm of the here and now, where it facilitates more natural movement. So I think that's important to point out.
Yeah. This is a little bit, well, this is a sidetrack, but just kind of random. So if you do have young
surprise.
kids,
There's always one of those.
we need like a little like jingle for like
I know
random thoughts. I can just hit play on. But if you do have younger kids, like, I don't know, maybe 10 and under, maybe 8 and under. And I'm sure there's a bunch of these, but one that we found on YouTube, it's what's it called? Cosmic Kids Yoga, I think it's called. And it's this lady who does she's a yoga instructor, but she does yoga moves to like the story of like like Trolls or Spider-Man or, something like that, like Frozen, like typically a movie, and kind of tells the story. And you're doing yoga poses to either act out what's happening or be the tree or, whatever. And
cute.
My girls love it. Sophie will ask for it. She does it by herself sometimes. But it's a super fun way to get your kids moving too. And, of course you can drop on the floor and do it with them in a way that doesn't, you're not thinking about, oh, I'm doing yoga. You're like, I'm just doing this really fun thing with my kids, and we're having a fun time, and we're laughing because I fell over during that pose. And, and it's more about that. You just, again, happen to be moving. So if you do have younger kids, I would definitely recommend checking that out, because we've done it a bunch and it's always been super fun.
I like that. What's it called again?
Cosmic Kids Yoga, or Kids Cosmic Yoga. It's one of those. Yeah.
Good stuff.
On YouTube. She has a bunch of videos.
Yeah. So we've listed, I just want to kind of recap some of the things we've listed, which is by no means all-inclusive list, but dancing has been a big theme. Anything with your kids, anything outside. I mentioned rock climbing. I mentioned classes like, at a gym or something, Zumba. You could take dance lessons. That would be good movement. I think volunteer activities are also good moving activities. I mean, oftentimes there's loading and unloading of goods. There's walking around at wherever you volunteer. We have yard raking volunteer activities. We have house painting volunteer activities here in Boise. So I know there's tons. There's dog walking and that kind of stuff if you don't have a pet. Others, I'm just trying to recap all of these different ideas so people can start thinking about how they can.
I'm even thinking like bird watching or something, going to the park and walking around looking for birds, like you mentioned, even if your activity is reading or writing, can you walk or ride your bike somewhere to go do that, to a park or a coffee shop or something like that? Are you gonna hang out with friends? Well, tie a walk to it. Maybe you can walk or ride your bike to the coffee shop, or maybe you're like, hey, let's have coffee, and then afterwards let's go walk around the mall. I don't know. Just if you can begin to just build that in easy to do and enjoyable ways, I think it just becomes easier to do it. Because, and I get, for some people, if you haven't been real active lately, being more active can feel daunting. I understand that 100%. And, it can feel like maybe a real task or a chore. But that's why I think it's important to, like we're talking about, explore, try some stuff out, try some different things to see what feels good to you, what you enjoy beyond just the physical piece, what you just enjoy doing because of all the things it brings about. And when you can find some things like that, moving more gets a whole lot easier.
Well, and you just said beyond the physical piece, there's definitely a mental neurochemical
Yeah.
aspect to
Yeah.
movement that is really important, and not just in
Hmm.
the ways that we've talked about. Getting in touch with nature definitely has you know opens up some neurotransmitters and
Hmm.
literally changes your brain physiology when you're in touch with nature and other living things. So that's important. Um, but moving your body, just changes in circulation, just a little blip of a change in heart rate can send signals to your body and your brain that wake up your brain, wake up your nervous
Hmm.
system, have a neurotransmitter release that is a positive for you.
Yeah.
So I think that's important to acknowledge too, that it's not just like, you know, the musculature and the flexibility and the heart rate and those things. I mean, your brain literally will behave differently, and your digestive system will behave differently the more movement you get when you're moving or at rest.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
So one of the last things I wanted to mention was one other observation I've made with this season in my life of being less about this regimented kind of, workout routine or like training program, and more about what feels good to me on any given day, is I'm also way more gracious with what my body is willing to do on a given
Hmm.
day. And training for pro triathlon was largely about executing the work. And yes, you have to be very in tune with if you're really exhausted, if something is feeling more like an injury, or if it's just kind of like tight, you
Yeah.
need to pay attention to it, all those things. But man, I would execute the work regardless of how I was feeling on, like, probably 95% of the time. It was like, you do the work. You just,
Yeah.
grit your teeth,
Just
and
do it.
that this is a process and you get it done. And now I am way better about, oh man, that specific movement in the gym doesn't feel good because I have a wonky shoulder. I'm going to
Mhm.
adjust it or change it. Oh, I can't hold that pose that long because it's hard on my wrist. I'm going to give myself a break and just come out of it and relax. And so just giving myself a little more, grace in the way I do things, I think has also offered a really nice mental boost, so
Yeah.
that I'm not, because it's easy, I think, to get intimidated or even a little bit afraid of the whatever movement or exercise is ahead of you if it doesn't feel good,
Right.
versus if that you can tell yourself at any given point, it's okay for me to adjust how I do this
Right.
and to modify the exercise or the movement or the route or the
Yeah.
distance. Any of that stuff I think is
Right.
good.
I think that's a great point, because as soon as you can't do that and you don't allow yourself to do it, I think you've taken away any joy
Yeah.
and you've made it only obligation,
Hmm.
you know? Yeah. So that's a great point. I think that was a nice little bow you just put on top there.
Thank you.
'Tis the
It is.
season for bows
It
on
is.
top, right?
I was just gonna say it's the right season for bows.
Better than those cherries on top.
Right. God.
Well,
Oh,
do you
what's
have a
your meeting in the mundane this week?
mine was last Saturday. So
Hmm.
Kathleen heard about this Christmas performance thing at some church. I don't know, Presbyterian church maybe. I don't know, like
Hmm.
20 minutes away. And it was like some youth singers like ages 7 to 17 doing um it was like all 16th century Christmas songs, like so
Mm.
real old stuff. And she really wanted to go to it, and I really did not. And I didn't have the best attitude about it, to be honest.
Oh.
Like I was like, yeah, I'll go, but I don't want to. Like, and originally I wasn't going to. She was going to take the girls, and I was like,
Yeah.
okay, this is stupid. I should go. And
Oh.
so we went, and it was fantastic. Like, it was
Oh.
so good. I was really impressed, because it's like, I mean, it's kids, right? So I'm thinking like, okay, I know how kids programs are. If your kid's in it, awesome. If your kid's not in it, like, how long is this going to be?
Hmm.
And it was really, really well done. And it just was like we had kind of had like a stressful day. Everybody was a little irritated with each other, like we just had one of those days where none of us are lining up and connecting, and we're all just kind of irritable, a little impatient. And it just like really kind of centered us all and brought us all together. And we just, we just really enjoyed it. And it was a really, really fun time. Yeah. And then
That's
afterwards we
awesome.
went and did like some Christmas shopping, all together. And it just wound up being this fun little night that I was not having the best attitude about and almost missed out on.
Oh, a little lesson
So,
in keeping an open mind there, that things can
yeah.
be better than
Yeah.
you might expect.
Yeah. Yeah. So that was mine. Yeah. How
I
about
love
you?
it. Very good. So I don't know if I mentioned this, but Raleigh had his annual vet checkup recently, and he's a little bit on the heavy side for his size, which is to be expected when we're going into winter. He's more sedentary
Mhm.
and he's not really roaming freely outdoors anymore.
Sure.
So we've kind of put him on a little bit of some calisthenics, going up and down the stairs and playing a little bit more a couple times a day. It's just
Does
I
he
have
find
to,
joy in that movement?
he seems to, because he
Okay.
cannot help himself. He'll run up the stairs, but then then he'll start lazy playing. Like he'll lay on his side, and he'll just kind of swat with his paw if you come close with
Mhm.
the toy. So playing with him though, with his toys, has just been so fun, because it is like another thing you have to carve time out of your day to do.
Sure.
And so I'm a little bit like, oh, here we go. It's play. He needs to
Mhm.
play. But once we get into it, and he's really into it, and he does the funniest things. And you get to experiment with like, oh, I'm going to move the toy around this way and see how he responds, and see
Mhm.
if he has fun, if he likes this. And then I'm going to run up the stairs. And let me tell you, I'm I'm getting a workout running up and down the stairs too. um, but it's fun to watch. And I find myself just busting out laughing sometimes at some of the
Yeah.
things he does, because I mean, Cat's
Awesome.
swatting at things like around the corner of a door, and running around like our solo stove on the patio, chasing things. And
Mhm.
he gets to going, and he'll like his back legs start kind of sliding out. And oh God, it's just funny. So that's
Cats
mine.
get real funny when they start playing hard. Yeah.
Well, and the thing is, he wasn't super playful before because he got his stimulation outside. So he would just
Sure.
go, be outside in nature and do his thing. And then he'd come inside
Mhm.
and he'd just sleep and cuddle with us. And, he was never, even if we tried to entice him to play, he was never playful.
Yeah.
But now that that's his stimulation, he's getting more into it. And it's been really fun to
I
watch.
bet.
So,
Super fun.
yeah, he's
Nice.
due for a play session right now. So I should
All
probably go play
right.
with him. Yep.
All right. Well, thank you everybody for listening. And we hope you just, explore ways to move and find some ways to move your body that just feel good and are fun and that just bring you joy.
And let us know if we left something off our list that
Mhm.
you enjoy doing. I bet that our friend Leslie would talk about riding her horse.
Riding your horse. Yeah.
I bet that's a big one. And then you connect with
Mhm.
the animal too. Yeah. So
Oh,
if we
yeah.
forgot any of those, let us know. And thanks so much for listening. We'll catch you next week.